Hi, everyone, and welcome to this CPE webcast. Is your firm struggling with workflow chaos? This is how identifying your service offerings can change everything. This 50-minute CPE session is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor and Canopy Software, an award-winning maker of cloud-based practice management systems for tax and accounting professionals. I'm Isaac O'Bannon, Managing Editor at CPA Practice Advisor, and I'll be your moderator today. I've worked with technology companies, CPAs, and tax professionals for more than 25 years. CPA Practice Advisor was founded in 1991 and provides news, articles, podcasts, videos, CPE events, and other resources for news and tax and accounting professionals. Before we get started, let me explain how you can earn your CPE credit for this webcast. This event is 50 minutes and qualifies for 1 credit of CPE credit in the field of business management and organization, or for general CPE. If you want to claim CPE credit, you must stay with us for the entire 50 minutes. During the webcast, we're going to show 4 polling questions. In each poll, you need to record an answer. This is our verification that you're still watching the webcast. After the event, you'll be presented with a post-event survey evaluation form. Your CPE certificate will be sent to the email address you used to register. During the event, you can ask questions in the field on your screen, and our speakers will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Also, the slide deck that will be presented is available for download. It'll be on the left side of your screen under the Event Resources tab. Now, today I'm joined by Liz Scott. She's an accounting technologist and an advanced certified pro advisor. She helps businesses leverage the best technology solutions for their needs. She's the owner of Liz Scott Training and Consulting, LLC, where she provides technical training and on-demand resources for best-in-class apps and solutions in the accounting space. And now we're ready to begin. So, hey, Liz, welcome, and let's talk about workflow challenges.
Well, thank you, Isaac, and I'm happy to be here with everyone. This is a topic that I enjoy, so I respect everybody's time, and I hope that you get as much out of this as I intend for you. So when it comes to talking about workflow, it's all about how do you manage it? So that's going to be part of what we're going to go through today. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is hearing from my community. So you've got a questionnaire area that you can go and put in questions. I'm going to be looking at that as we're going through today's webinar. So feel free to ask me questions about the presentation. Feel free to ask me questions about how I handle certain situations inside of my service offerings and in workflow, because this is really your time and it's designed for you. So I want to make the absolute most of it. So with that, Isaac, I think I'll just kick on through. So today, what we're going to be talking about is struggling with workflow and chaos and discovering how to identify your offerings. And that changes everything. So with our agenda, we're going to be talking about creating those workflows begins with understanding your services. Because if you don't have clearly defined services, that's going to be the starting point for being able to create those workflows. So you've got to have that as really your foundation. So we're going to talk about how do you build that foundation. And a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you today is going to be based off of my years of experience in my own firm. So I'm going to be walking you through what have I learned, trial and error. I'm one of those that I definitely think that I learned the hard way. So a lot of skinned, bruised knees, but I think that that's how I learned my most valuable lessons, and that's how I grow. So those are going to be things that I have brought along my journey. And because I enjoy sharing with my community, I like to create templates. And those templates, some of those are going to be things that I'm going to share with you today too. So you also have to map and analyze your current workflows. So that's going to be taking you through all of the details. You have to really start broad, but then you have to start narrowing down so that way you can communicate to your team. Hopefully you're more than a team of just one. Even whenever you're just a team of one, it's really difficult to always keep in your head what your next steps are if you've never documented it. So even if you're a small firm and team of one or team of two, really, I still recommend that you go through, you break down the details, and you put them somewhere so that way you don't just have to store them in your head. Relying on memory, that can sometimes get overwhelmed, and especially as we're coming up on busy tax times, there's a whole lot that we have to hold in our heads. And so it's just best to document. So I'm a big fan of documents. So we're also going to be talking about key work steps, the order of importance matters. And I'm going to be talking about my friend, the caterpillar back here. So, we've kind of developed in our firm a way to transform our clients. So you're going to see caterpillars and butterflies throughout today. And I would say everybody's got their own flavor, so your own brand. But this was something that I took and I wanted to be able to share with my clients so that way they would understand that transformation. So that's where some of these images come from. And then we also want to remove the client confusion. So as the client is moving along and progressing through your services and your workflows, it's great to communicate with the client where they are in that process. So there's a lot that we're going to be covering today, and hopefully this is going to be right in alignment with where you need to actually hone in on your service offerings and do some defining and refining. So when I think about workflows, I first want to think about what it is that we do. So some of the firms that I interact with, because I have a chance to, often talk to a lot of my accounting peers, some firms do a lot in financial services. Some firms focus on acquisitions. Some firms, want to focus on solopreneurs. So you really need to first identify who are your target audience and what services are you best at. Whenever, I started off, I really loved working with construction clients. They're messy. They have a lot to untangle. There's a lot of threads there. And so for me, that was really fun to be able to dig into. The more that I worked with construction clients, the more that I realized, I wanted clients that would really bring me more to the table. And so I started moving over into e-commerce. Still plenty messy. Lots of things to untangle there. So that became our area of focus in Accounting Lifeline. And that's the firm that I have a lot of my small business clients and, medium-sized clients. And we also have defined, what's the threshold of clients that we want to work with. And so with those e-commerce clients, they came to us often not really sure what it was that they needed. So we needed to make a structure that was very organized that would allow the client to understand what it was that we could do for them and how we were going to do it. So many of you, probably have a handful of clients in a handful of different industries. Some of you may have defined your services and the industries that you work in. So if you want to throw those kinds of things over into chat, I'm going to be watching that. But I always find it fascinating to see what kind of service industries people have specialized or in which fields. I've got friends that work in, the travel industry. And how cool is that? Because, she's got to go travel around to be able to work with these different clients. So, sometimes it's part of your goals too. If you want to travel, then, meeting these different clients that do things that are in alignment with what keeps you interested is also really awesome. So well-structured offerings start with a few really key basics. It's going to remove that confusion from the client. It's going to allow your client to understand your offerings and where they fit into that process. And then it's also going to increase the productivity of your team. So anytime that you've got something that's very clearly defined, then you're going to be able to share that with your team. Your team is going to be able to get better and better at how they offer those particular services. And then it also allows for your firm to become that lead in the project. So what do I mean by that? I mean that you're the area of expertise when it comes to accounting, bookkeeping, whatever, financial advisory services that you're offering. When you're able to document, then you're able to refine. And that's what starts to make you become that expert. If you're going to be doing a lot of social media, being able to define what you do will help you to, post those kinds of social threads. If you're looking for clients, you can really articulate what you do well. And that is going to ultimately help that client experience and satisfaction. So I'm going to start with a polling question, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Isaac, to kick off that poll.
Okay. Thanks for that, Liz. So our first polling question required for CPE: are your service offerings documented where clients can see them? Your options are, yeah, it's on our website, social profiles, and brochures, or somewhat, we verbally communicate those services during client meetings, or no, you offer services based on client needs. And I want to note for the attendees that if for whatever reason you have trouble selecting one of these, you can also answer the question in the question. You can answer the question in the Ask a Question box on the side of your screen. So what do you mostly see, Liz? Do you see kind of a mix or it seems to me it's really imperative, especially in the client advisory services. You have to tell them what you're going to advise them on.
I would say that most of us, including myself, started in that number 3 answer. It was when the client called and they told me what they needed, then that's what we offered. And we started moving more into that area of number 1, which I'm going to show everybody what we've refined it to. But I think it's a progress. It's always in development.
Okay. I think we're getting close enough to show the results. Do you want to wait a little bit longer or?
Oh, I'm good to move on. So we've got everybody answering those polls. And of course, the sooner those answers come in, the sooner that we can share results and keep on moving.
Okay, have we seen the results? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you the same thing. Did the results share?
Can we get those pushed up, Reagan? Or okay, I see it. We've got a discussion.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. To let our attendees know we can't always see what everybody else is seeing.
Very true. It creates an environment of excitement. So I'll keep on moving on, and I will kind of move into this place of clients don't know what they want. So some of those results that were coming in were a variety. And, it's based on sometimes when we answer the phone and our clients talk to us, we'll start talking and, I'll ask the question. So are your books reconciled? And they're like, I don't know what you mean. I just know that I'm behind. And, these are some of the things that they'll say is I need help. And my bookkeeper, maybe they've quit. Maybe they need training. Oftentimes, I don't know exactly how to ask what it is that they need. And so what we do is we really start with trying to listen and then navigate that conversation to be able to say, all right, we're going to take some leadership in this conversation by asking them the types of questions that we think that they'll understand what we're trying to ask them. But sometimes you're going to have somebody want to convert a file. So maybe they're in an accounting system and they're wanting to move over into a new accounting system. So it's really pretty wide what the gamut is. But if you put those types of services that you offer, like if you are somebody who likes converting data files, that's me. Of course, that falls into that hairy, tangly mess that I enjoy. So, that's something that you want to put on your website to let people know you do convert files or you do help with tax. Not all firms are going to be tax firms. So a lot of that you can identify is going to help with your clients. So what we've done is we've used this caterpillar concept. And I've got my caterpillar friend back here in the background. And what you're seeing on screen is our design of a caterpillar to help a client understand where do we start in the process and where do we ultimately want to take them. And the reason we do this is because we'll get phone calls where somebody says, we want you to help us monthly. Well, I'd love to be able to move those clients into those monthly reoccurring services. I think that all of us would agree that that's a great revenue. So having that reoccurring work is really nice. But what I always try to communicate with my clients is we can't just start in the reoccurring work. We first need to evaluate what are the processes. Is there cleanup? Are there catch-up items? Do they have a credit card account that has never been added to their accounting system? We're primarily based in QuickBooks Online. So if you hear me throw that out several times today, it's because it's just kind of ingrained in my brain. So whenever I'm working with somebody and they're talking about catch-up and I'm asking questions and maybe I'm looking at their balance sheet and I can see that they've got loans that have never been closed out. You know, to me, those are areas that we need to first identify and address before we can move over into this idea of reoccurring services. And I would even say, whenever I've got somebody who comes and they want to start talking about apps, again, I'm going to direct them to this caterpillar so that way they can be identifying where do they fit into this process and where are we going to take them before we can get into that apps place. So I'm going to share my screen. And what I want to be able to do in sharing my screen is show you what our website looks like. So if I click on my button here, you should be seeing my website. So if you're not and you want to throw it over into chat, I'll be able to see that. But here's our landing pages for the service offerings. And when you scroll down it, you're going to see what we call this caterpillar. And again, it's going to talk through each of these, and we're going to go through these in some depth today. So you don't have to really come over here and dig in, but I just want to let you know, this is where we start a lot of the conversations with our clients. When they come to us and they say, we'd really like to move into financial coaching, you know, I'm going to take them over here and I'm going to say, we first need to understand your processes before we can move into this financial coaching. And then I also articulate to them that this is a phased approach, and we've developed this after years of working with clients. So we don't want to just move into this place of saying yes to our client and having this idea of being able to offer financial coaching to a client when we don't know if they've got good books. We're not sure if their internal team is fully trained. So we want to always move into this place of being able to talk to the client with the expectations of, we are the leaders in this area, we're experts in what we do, and we're going to guide that client through the process so that way they can ultimately have a very good experience, and so can we, and we can have a win-win on both sides. So I'm going to stop sharing screen, and thank you for that feedback that yes, you could see it. And move back over into our slides. And I'm going to take you through this next one, which this is the next piece. So I showed you my caterpillar, which is going to really be the process and defining each of those phases. But the next thing that we do is we define those phases with timelines. So we want to give the client some expectations as to how long each of these phases are going to take. And the reason that we do that is we want to always give the client some expectations that, one, this isn't going to happen overnight. They didn't get their books in this manner overnight. You know, maybe they've got a mess. That didn't happen overnight. That happened over a period of time. And so it's going to take us a while to be able to identify what has happened in their world that has created this mess. Do they have an app that's maybe importing a bunch of bad data? Do they have a bookkeeper who needs some training? And if so, what does that training look like? What are the areas that maybe they need some improvement? So we always start with telling the client, this is a phased approach, and we're going to move you through each of these phases. And as we're progressing, we're going to let the client know that we're progressing and that they're progressing and where they are. So the communication is hyper important. And I would say there's a lot of tools out there that are going to help you with that communication. I think that accountants are so bogged down in tasks that this is an area that we struggle. So if you're looking for some tools that help you with communication, I would say look for workflow tools that have got that built into it, where you can talk to the client, where you can assign some tasks to the client. That's going to be something that can help you with, maybe it's just a button that you click and you're onboarding a client and you want to send the client a welcome email. And there's enough automation out there that you can actually start to say, let's automate this by clicking a button, send out that welcome email to our client, send out that request for gathering all of the documents or the logins, whatever it is that you need. But that way you can communicate with your clients where they are in that process. Most of them are not going to understand exactly how we work. So the more that we can define how we're going to interact with those clients, the better. So, what items are needed and how we're going to continue to request those items. A portal is going to be much safer than ever emailing. So, most of you have already got signature threads that say, don't email me any sensitive information, use my portal links. That's perfect. That's the kind of thing that we want to let the clients know that we're monitoring for them, and we're also thinking about safety and security. So here's that first phase of the caterpillar. So this is the process evaluation. When we understand the client, then we can understand what the issues are. So we do an analysis. We want to be able to understand what it is that they need. So we do a discovery. And I will tell you, each of these phases that we're going to be walking through, we actually do an engagement letter for. So we can do engagement letters that include multiple phases at once, or sometimes we do engagement letters that just attack one phase at a time. And doing it in a manner that's one phase at a time allows the client to understand that each of these phases are going to require resources on your side. So you might have multiple team members that are going to be included in this discovery phase. Maybe you've got somebody who, if you're a large enough firm, then you've got somebody who probably does this type of onboarding, and you've got a process in place to be able to identify what are the needs, who are the different individuals that are performing these tasks. So there's an intake form, and that intake form is going to allow you to move through each of these phases. One of the things that I've seen over and over again, it doesn't matter if I'm working with a small client or I'm working with somebody who's really large. What I see over and over again is a lot of these employees have been hired because there was a need for a position, but that position was never clearly defined. So if you're a firm like ours who likes to define job duties and descriptions, this is actually a service offering. I find it really rewarding. It's something that is a living document. And anytime that position turns over, they've got a document that they can go back to, and they can go back through what are the duties of that particular job. That is a very well rewarding and rewarded job. So I would say it's something that I would look into. If you're somebody who likes to document processes, that's a good one. I'm also going to move over to this next screen right here. So I want to share some templates with you today. Here's one of those that I want to share. So we call this our introduction to assessment. So we want to pull in a lot of questions. So again, whenever we're having those first initial conversations with our clients, we want to gather information from them, and we want to document it at the same time. So we have a questionnaire, and we go through that. Some of you who have got a workflow tool in place, this is something that you have probably already built, and that's great. That's great for you. And I, always try to update our onboarding process with different questions, things that maybe the team has came back with. So this QR code is going to take you to this Google Sheet that's going to have a lot of these questions on it. They're going to ask some of those onboarding questions. So I consider these the discovery phase. And this interview sheet, we even have scripts that go along with it. So if you've got team members who haven't done this before, we've got scripts to be able to say, this is going to take about 15 minutes. We're going to walk you through this questionnaire. So are you a new business owner, or have you owned multiple businesses? Have you outsourced before? What's the business structure? Who am I talking to? Who's the decision maker? Asking things about, are they current on their tax returns? Are they current on payroll and sales tax? All of those are questions that really are going to come into play as they progress through your services. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Isaac, for this next polling question. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go over to Q&A and look what is over there for me.
Okay, thank you. So polling question number 2, what is your biggest workflow challenge? And we've got several options here: lack of structure, team communication, time management, lack of tools, or keeping workflow current. And once again, if you can't click a button, just write it in the question field. It seems like it's usually going to be a combination of these, and I'm interested again in hearing what Liz says. But I know that each of these poses unique challenges to business. It's really important to keep your workflow current, though. But to do so, you have to have all of those other things.
I agree. I mean, I feel like, lack of structure. That's what I see, and I hear from my peers a lot, is they're just doing it because they've got so much work that they need to push out, that there isn't much of an organization. Like, some of my peers have got even a piece of paper, and they're just like writing on it, and they're circling, number 1 item to do today. That's really difficult, especially whenever you're trying to share with the team what's happening and even be able to pass to the next person. So I'm always going to first recommend a workflow tool. So Isaac, I think that's my biggest answer to this one, is a workflow tool.
All right. And do we have those results? Okay. They have been shared. I wish I could see them too. Anyway, but we will be able to provide those results they've already been shared with the attendees. So.
Well, thank you, Isaac. And it looks like I've got a question here, and it's asking about workflow tools. What do you do if there's so many workflow tools that have been incorporated into the business? And it sounds like in this case, there's 3. I'm going to say that's a problem that many of us face. We've got plenty of information in the accounting industry. What we lack is a way to structure it. So I would recommend looking at workflow tools that incorporate a lot of the different areas that you've got divided into 3 different tools. So if it's communication with the client, if it's a portal for the client to upload, if it's the task management, all of those can be incorporated into one tool. So that's what I would recommend whenever it comes to trying to consolidate tech. The next thing that I'll talk about is process documenting. So this is what our firm uses. We record meetings, we transcribe them, and then we also have Loom and Scribe whenever we're doing documentation for training. I'm going to take you through Loom and Scribe later, but I first kind of want to talk to you about how does it work in recording and transcribing meetings. So the way that it works for us, we are a Microsoft-based firm, and inside our Microsoft-based firm, some of the things that we do is we'll record a meeting. So you should be seeing an example of, I had a meeting with Joel, and Joel was somebody that I was talking with, and he's actually a speaking coach, so not a client in this case. I was a client of his. But the concept is I wanted to show you that we were using Microsoft, so using the recording inside of Microsoft for that meeting, and then we were able to take that transcription and then with Copilot, ask Copilot to then summarize that meeting. So I'm going to show you what that looks like live. So I'm going to share my screen again, so that way you can see what it looks like. Because here's where I'm a big fan of automation, and I'm a big fan of using tools to be able to help you with your tasks. So you should be seeing Teams. And here with Teams, what I've got is a meeting. It's recorded. You got the whole meeting here. And here's my transcription. And then here's where I can come over with my Copilot. So Copilot, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Microsoft has got internally like a chat GPT. And so you can come over here and you can start to ask Copilot some questions. Here's some prompts. Recap the meeting. It's going to take that meeting and it's going to start to generate a response. And then we can come through and we can look at the response that it's going to give us. It's going to take that meeting and it's going to tell us, here's the different events that took place, introduction, engagement, speaking, positive self-talk. These are all things. And then I can say draft an email reply. And so I can actually use my Copilot to be able to recap that meeting. So a lot of you are also using other tools like Google, you're using Zoom. They've all got features like this. And so it doesn't really matter what tool it is that you're using. I'm just walking you through. Here's an example of the way that our firm stays up on communication. So I asked Copilot to draft an email. It's going to even give me the subject line, and then it's going to tell me everything that we needed to do regarding action items, who's responsible for those action items, and then we're able to move on. So I'm going to go back over into the slideshow, but I did want to take you through, these are some of the things that we use in our firm in order to be able to get to the meat of what it is that we're offering our client. So the next phase of our caterpillar is what we call cleanup. So once we have done a diagnosis, that can be a delivery all its own, and then you can deliver that to the client and you can say, who's going to be doing these cleanup items? We'll do a summary that says, we'll say, these are the loans that are out of date. Or we'll say the bookkeeping looks like it's never been reconciled for credit card X, Y, and Z. Those are the kinds of things that we would say. And then the client, that's why we keep this as a separate engagement. They need to make that decision. Are they going to do the cleanup themselves? Most likely not. Or are they going to pass that over to us? And in that case, now they've already got some awareness of what are the areas that are going to need to be addressed. We still pull the client in to be able to say, did we capture everything? Because we're going to create a cleanup task list. And it's going to say, we've reviewed the general ledger. Here's our feedback, asset accounts, liability accounts, moving over into thinking about QuickBooks, classes, locations, are there areas that need to be cleaned up there? And then also compliance. Are they up to date with sales tax and payroll tax? If not, that needs to be part of your engagement for cleanup. And then action items. So making sure that reconciliations, who's going to be responsible for helping us to identify unresolved transactions. We'll actually go as far as to put who's our person of contact for unresolved transactions. That way it's very clear to the client what it is that we're going to be offering, and it allows us to actually charge more. One of the things that I've learned throughout my time in this industry is that clients don't often understand what they're paying for. So the more that they're aware of what they're getting, and the more that they are going to value it. And the more that you're clear with your client, we hear about value pricing. That clarity is actually valuable. And that's how you start to hire more team members. That's how you grow your firm, is making sure that you're charging enough for the services that are being offered and documenting them. making sure that it's very clear. And then, recommendations. So areas of improvement, that one's always a fun one. That allows us to be able to actually kind of showcase, what are some other areas that we could focus on for this client? What are some additional things that we could do? So we can sometimes talk about automation. Maybe they've never used bank feeds. That's an example. We would say, let's start using bank feeds. There's no reason that you need to pay our firm to keep up your bookkeeping. Maybe you need to have that internal bookkeeper just trained on how to use bank feeds. So those are all areas that that I would say are fun to make sure that you're sharing with the client, and that also gets them excited for other phases. So the next phase would be catch up. So moving into this catch up phase, here's where we start to talk about making sure that the bookkeeping is up to date. So we talked about cleanup before, but now we're playing in that catch up spot. Or maybe there's not very much cleanup to do, and you want to create an engagement that includes both cleanup and catch up. That is something that we often do, where you include these two items together. They really happen at the same time, so you might as well put those in one engagement letter. But we timeline stamp this. So how long do we think that it's going to take to maybe file all of those past due sales tax returns? How long is it going to make sure that their books are tax ready? Those are all things that we want to communicate, and we give timestamps in our proposal, and it's loose. It's not something that is going to be delivered in 1 week. We'll say things like, because of the conversation and communication back and forth and the need from documents from the client, we expect this to take 2 months. I think on average, whenever we do a cleanup catch up, I'm going to say it's about a 3-month project. And the reason that we give ourselves enough time is if we meet that expectation early, that's a win for everybody. But if we tell our clients to expect this done in 3 weeks, and we haven't received statements back from them 2 weeks after what we've told them is going to be the end of our deadline, that's not on us. So those are the kinds of reasons that we have put in a pretty nice buffer into how long it's going to take to clean up the books. So that way their understanding of why it's going to take this long is because of the need for document sharing. It's because of the need for, if we run through a transaction and it's $50,000 withdrawal, we've got no documentation as to why, that client may instantly know that that was for building improvements. But they also might come back and say, well, that was, maybe the question was $2,000. They're going to have to go back through and figure out what they were spending those $2,000 on. So we want to document, we want to share those expectations. And then the other thing that we do is we want to communicate the wins. So this is where I think that it's really fun. Again, we use this caterpillar, and this caterpillar is part of the transformation. So we want to visually share with them what's happening. So we will actually send our clients emailed celebrations saying, congratulations, you've completed a milestone. So maybe we've collected all of the documents that we need from the client. We share that with them. Maybe we have completed the cleanup and the catch-up work. And so we want to communicate that with them. We want to share with them that they are progressing, because again, it's one of those foreign ideas of what is it that we're doing in the back office? They're not always aware. And so if they've got a warm and fuzzy feeling, they're going to continue to engage with us, and they're going to continue to share what they need because we're giving them wins. So this is just kind of a tip that I've learned along the way, that a little smile with your client is going to turn into some value. The next thing that we do, once we've had our hands on the books, once we've been able to do that diagnosis of what it is that we're seeing, once we've had that cleanup and the catch up, now we're able to train. So when a client comes to us and they want to have us start training and we haven't had a chance to look at the books, That's really unfair for us to be able to do a good job of training. So we want our hands in the books. We want to be able to feel what is happening. And, an area that is so common is undeposited funds. It can be something that can be wild and hairy, because if the bookkeeper doesn't have a really good handle how to process the AR, so from start to finish, what to do, then they're never going to understand that, no, over in that bank feed, and you say that you've received a deposit, that doesn't really sync up to, did that invoice that had a payment then matched that deposit? They never really get to think about what that complete phase is. So going through the books, looking at undeposited funds, being able to seek out unresolved transactions, these are all things that we can then go to the client and say, we'd like to have some one-on-one training. I would say this one-on-one training can be pretty varied. So it can range from, maybe you want to work with a client and you want to just work with maybe one bookkeeper or several. We record those sessions. We make sure that we document them. And here's where I want to pull in a couple more tools that we use for our training. And we do charge separately. Again, this is a separate engagement. It can still be part of that greater engagement that you're giving to them that has the different phases, but that's something that you want to communicate. So if it is all in one engagement, that's fine. You just want to make sure that you're pricing it accordingly. So you're going to need to have some resources in order to do a training properly. Record those trainings. Make sure you're documenting them. Some of you are already familiar with Loom and Scribe, but those are awesome tools. Loom is, it's going to record your screen so you can make a short video. So if a client comes to you and they say, I've got a question about X, I want to know how do I close out my AR? What does that process look like? You can create in Loom, like what we do in our demo file. We'll go through and we'll open up a invoice. We'll create that invoice. We'll receive a payment on that invoice. Then we'll deposit that. Then we'll go over to the bank feeds and we'll show them how to match that. And then we'll even take them to that next step, which is the reconciliation screen. That way they can see the life cycle of AR and it's documented. If you want to do that for each client, you could use their books to do that. We have in the past done that. Loom is really awesome because it allows you to share a link and they don't have to log in. They don't have to do anything special. They don't have to have an account. So it's super easy. And then what Loom will do is also track to tell you how many viewers have you had on that video. And you can even see what the viewers were. So were the people that you were wanting to see it actually see it? But we do these oftentimes in our demo account because we want to give a client an idea as to what it looks like, but we don't want to have to create it for each individual client. So we'll use a generic demo account. The other one is Scribe. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again because I want to talk you through what Scribe does. So for those of you who are aware of Scribe, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like one of the best tools ever for training. I'm going to tell you, whenever it comes to documenting your workflow, it's a tool that you can use there. Any tool that I'm using, I do go through and I look at the privacy and security settings in there. But, oftentimes, it's like I said, I'm using a demo account, so I'm not sharing any sensitive information. But let me take you through what Scribe does for you, because it's pretty darn cool. So I'm going to share my screen again. And I want to make sure I'm sharing my entire screen here. So I want to make sure I'm sharing the right one. Okay, so now that I'm here, here's Scribe, and I'm going to take you through that in just a second. But I want to take you through a scenario where I'm inside of a demo account. I want to start a new Scribe, so I can say new. I'm going to use my browser. I can tell it that I want it to start capturing with QuickBooks. And then over here on the side, you can see that there's a tool that pops up. and it's going to capture each of my steps by my clicks of my mouse. This is the thing that's cool about it. So maybe I want to teach them how to make a sales receipt. Let's do something easy. So look, it just captured the plus new. Now I want to say sales receipt. So it captured that I clicked on sales receipt. Maybe I want to choose a customer. So I'm going to pull that customer in. And then I want to tell them, go through, look at the date. So it'll click on the date, sales rep. Maybe it's really important for the location to be selected here. And then I also want to have them work on what payment method. And then I want to send it to undeposited funds. And then I want to be able to choose what product and service. And then make sure that a class is captured. So that's going to be the end of my scribe. And now I'm going to have a window that's going to pop up and it's going to show me all of these steps. So when it comes to documenting your workflow and documenting training for your clients, I'm going to recommend Scribe as something that you check out. It's really inexpensive. It does some really cool stuff. If I needed to edit any of these areas, I could. So I could come through here and I could just say, select customer. I could change that in here. If I wanted to delete a step, maybe I don't want that step to be in there, I could just hit the delete button. So there's even a bubble here that's going to call out like, what is it that you're wanting to zoom on? So there's a lot of good information that is pulled up, and then you can actually have a nice chance to edit it before you share that with your clients. All right, I'm going to go back over into our slides. And that way you should be seeing my next group, which is going to be talking about our poll. That's right. Okay, so Isaac, I'm gonna pass it over to you for our next poll.
All right, thank you. So this is poll question number 3. How do you currently provide your training for clients? One-on-one sessions, group training, pre-recorded videos or tutorials, or you don't currently provide any structured training? Hopefully it's not number 4, but I'm sure that Liz can help you get started.
Well, Isaac, that number 4, I would say most people don't start in training clients. It's something that, you have to decide you want to put resources into. It's a service offering that I find very lucrative, but it's something that does take resources. So that's why I consider it a service offering, and that has value to it. It has a lot of value to it.
All right, the results are coming in, and I did figure out how to view them. Right now, we're looking at the majority of them are one-on-one sessions, the initial, but a good number also don't currently provide any structured training. So how would you suggest someone determine if they need to provide structured training, and how would they go about it?
I think that's a great question. Our firm is a believer that the more that our clients are aware, the better their performance is going to be, and ours. So some of those easy things we want to teach the client how to do. We don't want to be in a place where we're constantly cleaning up. So that's where some of the training came into play for us, is we were just making it easier on the team to not have to go back through and just do a lot of cleanup. So that's where we started with this idea of training and how we were going to offer it and what we were going to do with those trainings. So it came because of a need that we wanted our clients to be able to do a better job, so that way we weren't always playing this cleanup behind the scenes. Well, I'm going to move us over into this reoccurring. So this is my beautiful butterfly. This is where everybody wants to be. This is where I would say most firms are going to have their greatest revenue stream, is in these reoccurring services. But you can see it took us a lot to get here. So we needed to do a process evaluation. That diagnosis, that is an offering. The cleanup, the catch up, those are offerings. Training, that's another offering. And now we're in reoccurring services. So It takes a lot to get a client onboarded. And I would say oftentimes firms are not properly compensated for it. But if you break it apart and you really start to help your clients see why you have phases, it allows you to have more lucrative accounting firm, first of all. It also allows for your team to understand what phase is the client in. So it's easy to, holler across the office or put it in Teams or whatever in your workflow documentation services to be able to say, they're in the reoccurring services phase. That's a good job. And then, I was sharing earlier our little caterpillar that was the celebration. This one, confetti that comes out. It's like, here's a little butterfly and you earned this. You've worked with us to be able to get your firm to this spot. So, this is definitely a celebration. And here's where we start to say reoccurring services for bookkeeping, reconciling, payroll, sales tax, and then that ongoing training and support. So at this point is when we have a better handle on what those reoccurring service fees should be. So earlier, like when we were talking about a client being onboarded, if you jump to this, here's our price, you're probably going to shortchange yourself because you're going to learn something about that client that you aren't going to know if you just jump into the reoccurring services. And you're not going to get an opportunity for additional revenue for the resources that it's going to take to get into that cleanup and catch up spot. We're all doing it. It's just, this is an idea to be able to take you through communicating with your client why there's extra fees for this and why we're not just jumping into the reoccurring services. And I can tell you, we've been doing this for years. The clients get excited when they move into this reoccurring services place. There have been times when we might do it side by side. We might start some of the reoccurring services alongside the onboarding. But I'm going to tell you, our best client experiences, our best team experiences come from working our caterpillar. That phased approach allows everybody time to be able to move and learn each other and learn each other's vocabulary and learn each other's communication style, and the importance of why we need certain documents and timely. So these are all important things to be able to celebrate and communicate. Another area that I would recommend is technology is here. Our clients are looking for apps. They're seeking them out on their own. They're connecting apps like Divi and which was bought by Bill, which used to be Bill.com. So they're finding these different apps themselves and they're connecting them, and sometimes they're not finding the best in class. That's where I would say this is another service offering opportunity. I never want to just connect an app to a client. So in e-commerce, it's where a lot of apps are necessary. I don't want a client to come to us and say, hey, can you help us with Shopify importing all of the information to QuickBooks? Yes, we can do that, but we need to understand by doing a discovery. We need to understand they're using Shopify, they're using Stripe, they're using PayPal. We need to understand all of these pieces. Are they selling on Amazon? So they have multi-channels. We need to know what's happening before we can just plug in an app. I'm big on workflow. I'm big on processes. This is something that I truly enjoy. And what I have discovered is every single app has a built-in workflow. And if you are connecting apps that fight your client's workflow, you're not going to have a win. It's either going to be they don't enjoy the steps and the processes and the way that the app is demanding them do that, or they're never going to fully adopt the app. So here again is where I say, do that needs analysis. Walk through the different apps, understand what it is that they need, understand what they want. And let me take you through another template that I want you to be able to download. So this template is awesome. Here's a QR code so you can download this. This is what our firm uses for app evaluations. And when we're talking to our clients, this is, again, another service offering. And we talk to our clients about each of the apps that are out there. We walk them through, maybe they want to do dispatching. So we'll look at the different dispatching apps and we'll compare them. They'll tell us what their must-haves are. They'll tell us what their nice-to-haves are. And then we rank them. And then you can see there is a tally that's happening at the bottom of this evaluation worksheet that is tallying each of these areas for these apps, and you're going to have a clear winner by the end of the evaluation. The other thing I do is I recommend that this is something that your client is involved in. You might go out and do the initial evaluation to find these 3 different apps to compare, but I pull my clients along for each of those demos. And the reason is some of those demos might be a fail, or they might be times where you learn something about the client that they hadn't previously shared. So I want you to have this template. I think it's a good one. And I also want to make sure that we get this next poll in. So Isaac, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, the final polling question. How confident are you in your firm's current technology stack? You're very confident it's working well. You're somewhat confident it could use some improvement. You're not confident you need a better system, or you're unsure because you don't handle your technology decisions.
I'm going to say probably everybody is going to say their technology stack needs help.
Yeah,
but it's great. This is a good question, especially as technology is changing.
And that is what the results are showing. The early results, they're pretty confident or they're very confident. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Isaac. Well, so, here's that outsourced bookkeeping phase. This is where we really get to move into, collecting those fees for the ongoing work. This is where I'd say everybody wants to be, but it's really important that the client understands your timeline, your phases, so that way they appreciate that win that they have also earned alongside with your team who has earned this place to be able to get into that reoccurring space. The other thing too is you can see at the very end of the caterpillar is the financial coaching. So this is something that we actually in our firm has decided that we want to first do reoccurring services for a client before we'll help them with that financial coaching. And one of the reasons we do that is we want to be very confident in the books. We want to understand what's happening in the books before we start giving them advice. So sometimes they want to grow their businesses. Sometimes they want to have cash flow forecasts. A lot of times I work with even mid-sized clients that do not have budgets in place. So these are all areas that we can meet. Sometimes with budgets, it's weekly. Sometimes with cash flow statements, they want to be able to go through those weekly. You need to decide what are the client's needs. Is it okay to do it monthly? Is it something that you really need to do more often? But this is something that I consider this a bit of a graduation. I don't want to start here in this area. I will say there's probably firms out here that would disagree because they focus on financial coaching. So they do, this type of work on a regular recurring basis. But if this is going to be an add-on service to your client offering, this is going to be your top tier. So hopefully a lot of the things that we've gone through today are areas for you to be able to think about. What are you offering to your client? How are you offering it to your clients? And then I would say being able to go back and forth with your team and say, who likes working on these different pieces of the work? There's some team members who love doing cleanup. They want me to get them a pizza, let them close the door to their office and leave them alone. There's other people who really enjoy the client conversations. So it really has to do with who do you have on your team? What are you focused on? And what offerings do you want to give to your clients? I would say that looking over right now, Isaac, there's not any questions that have came in, any new questions. So I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to everyone for being here. And I've got my contact information here, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Isaac.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Sorry, this isn't Isaac. Isaac accidentally got kicked off the platform. But yeah, so thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, Liz, for presenting to us today. And thank you, Canopy, for sponsoring this webinar. After we close this webinar, you'll be presented with a post-event survey for this event. Filling out this form is optional, but we'll hope you share your feedback with us that we can continue to improve our webinar series. Thank you all again for attending, and our webinar will conclude now. Thanks, Liz.
Bye, everyone.